Robert Belle, welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm super excited to have the chance to chat. You have a really interesting and unique background, and today we're going to be discussing how we can leverage creativity to be able to live and work more abundantly. And I know you do a lot of work in this area, so it's going to be a fascinating conversation. But also, I know you are in Kenya, and I believe you're the first Kenyan that I've ever interviewed on this podcast. So I'm excited about that and excited to have the chance to extend the reach of our listenership and hopefully help you out with the work that you're doing there in Kenya as well.
Awesome. That's fantastic. I'm very honored to be perhaps the first person you're interviewing from Kenya. And yes, I'm very passionate about human development and ready to get into this.
Excellent. As we get started, I just wanted to read Robert's bio for everyone. Robert A. Belle is a transformational speaker, author, and ACCA qualified accountant. He helps people who feel stuck in their career or life journey to break away from the norm and find new paths that reveal their true value. He focuses on dismantling the line between licensed professionals and the creative world. Robert is a winner of the 2019 Advocate of the Year Award by the ACCA for his work assisting other accountants to embrace their creativity and reach new growth potentials, both personally and professionally. He is on a global mission to help individuals who feel inferior and have given up on their dreams to think freely, create unapologetically, and live abundantly. Again, such an honor to be with you today, Robert. Thank you for joining us. As we get started with our discussion today, is there anything you would like to share with listeners in terms of personal background, personal context around and framing around your expertise?
All right. Thank you so much for that great introduction. The one thing that I wanted to highlight, you mentioned about it, is that I am a proud accountant. I'm a very proud accountant, but not your stereotypical accountant who just sits in the back office. So I'm what you want to call a mix of both worlds. So I play just in between licensed professionals and the creative world, and I've established my presence there. So I've spent some time in sales and marketing. I've spent some time across the entire spectrum, from least creative to most creative. And I'm just right now smack in the middle, trying to pull everyone to find their sweet spot.
Excellent. I think that's awesome. And we do need those sorts of bridge builders. I think in various aspects of life, it's important to have the people who sit in that kind of uncomfortable area in between, whether that's interdisciplinary work, cross-functional work in this situation, kind of creative work versus analytical work. I think all of that's super important. So let's start with the idea of creativity. How do you define creativity? And again, I think it's a unique thing that, a certified accountant does a lot of work in creativity. Obviously, accountants can be creative just like anyone else. So I'm not trying to put a stereotype on that. But I do think that's not typically what people think of. So it's a unique kind of personal life experience that you bring to this conversation. So what is creativity to you, and why is it important as we try to live our best lives?
I like how you said that it's very unique situation that I play, that area that I play in. And for me, creativity is precisely that. It's unique. It's not just unique, it's personal. A lot of people define creativity with coming up with ideas, but for me, it's deeper than that. There's a deeper dimension to creativity. And I say that it's an identity extractor. For me, creativity really challenges you to go to the depths of your imagination, the depths of your curiosity, to bring out your unique connections, your unique combination of things. I mean, creativity is if you look at it from a binary perspective, something that's novel and something that's useful. And I can tell you that something that is very novel is the ideas and the dreams that each and every one of us has. It's very unique and it's very personal. So for me, creativity is not just simply connecting dots, but it's connecting dots in a way in which you as an individual see them connecting. There's endless possibilities in how we can connect and how we can bring up ideas, especially when it's mixed with our experience, our environment, our culture, so many other factors. There's just so many unique combinations that can come out of that.
Yeah, so I think that's amazing. Identity extractor. I think that's a great way of framing it. And it's interesting. We all have, we're all an amalgamation of different identities, right? So a lot of times we try to pigeonhole someone. We say, oh, that person's an accountant, so that means they're this way, or this person is, an artist, that means they're this way. But we have different pieces of ourselves, and we have different identities, and we're balancing those out. And so that's what you're doing in the current role that you play. Where you have, just like all of us, we have creative minds, we have analytical minds, we have different components, different aspects of ourselves, and it's just a matter of maximizing and capitalizing on what we have, and sometimes flexing that muscle a little bit and stretching ourselves, because sometimes I think we get creativity beat out of us a little bit through life. We start out as kids as very creative, very innovative. We're very into make believe, and you give us some simple toys, and we can keep ourselves entertained, for hours, and make up games and fun activities. And then over time, though, we kind of get normalized. We get socialized into kind of these structures and systems and processes, and thinking about, this is acceptable behavior, this isn't. And so all of that conformity kind of in some ways can drive some of that creativity out of us if we're not careful. And then we sometimes forget as we get older that, yeah, we are creative beings. We had creativity when we were younger, we all did, and we can still have creativity, and sometimes we just need to learn to reflex that muscle, even if we tend to think of ourselves as a very analytical type of a person.
Absolutely. I mean, not only is the creativity beaten out of us, I say that it's stolen from us. I take a very, how can I say, a very interesting position when I say that it's stolen from us, because when something is stolen from you, it's taken without your permission. And we don't really freely give up our creativity. We have to give it up so that we can fit in. We have to give it up so that we can comply. We have to give it up so that we can shape and become, that output, that the normal situation or normal distribution requires of us. And so over time, it really gets stolen from us because we give it up without even knowing what we're giving up. So much so that when we become older, we start, confessions such as, I'm not creative. I'm not creative. And the second part of that is we then are socialized to limit creativity to artistic expression. And that's why I say that creativity is an identity extractor. As you said, we have different identities, and our professions should never be the source of identities. Actually, they cannot be the source of identities. They're just an expression of identity. And that's why people say, okay, now that you're championing creativity, why do you still carry the label, of an accountant? And I said, no, it's not a label, because label brings with it limitations. It's just a description of my identity. It's not a definition of my identity. So when we engage our creativity, we're helping to bring out other parts of us that have been buried or hidden or just totally undiscovered, by trying new things, by exploring and learning transferable skills, like what you mentioned, cross-functional knowledge, interdisciplinary knowledge. That's who we're meant to be as human beings. We're never meant to be pigeonholed into one single career, one single profession, but that's just how we were, educated.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I think having that recognition, that understanding of the creativity piece is essential. Now let's talk a little bit more about the abundant life, and we can talk about the abundant life in terms of personal life, our home life, but also our work life. How do we? Well, first of all, I guess what does that mean to you? What is the abundant life? And then how do we connect creativity to living more abundantly?
Right. Yeah, I think we should definitely look at now, what does it mean to, be living abundantly, whether in the personal life or the professional life? Um, Before I look at each one separately, just on a general high level view, that when we talk about living abundantly, abundance means more than enough. Means that you are never running out of something. the one thing that we never run out of as human beings are ideas. We never run out of ideas. We never run out of questioning, except when we get to the point where we're stuck. When we get to the point where we're stuck, a lot of us stop there. And that's where we cease to live abundantly. The more questions we ask, the more experiences we have, the more experimentations we try, is the more we move towards living abundantly. And abundantly doesn't necessarily mean being the richest person in the world, because at times we start to go down that path. But living abundantly means that you are able to continuously shift. You're able to continuously manage the terrain of uncertainty. You're continuously able to learn new skills. Neuroscientists tells us that that's neuroplasticity, that our brain has the ability to continuously shift, to continuously change, to adapt, to create new neural connections. And that's just the way our brains are wired to grow. The brain does not grow by mere consumption of knowledge. It's about creation and cognition. And that's what it means to live abundantly, that no matter what situation we're put into, we're able to thrive and live abundantly, not just mainly get by. So if we look at it professionally, you can stick me in any function in a business, right? And I'm able to take the skills that I've learned from either accounting, from sales, from wherever, and apply it in that function and come up with ideas. I may not necessarily be the most technical person, right? And oftentimes we think that living abundantly is restricted to technical knowledge, but it goes beyond that. Living abundantly goes beyond collaborating. It's about awareness. It's about knowing where the dots are and learning how they can connect. So that's what it will mean to live abundantly on a professional side. And then on a personal side, it goes back again to learning new skills, to having different experiences. Imagine when you travel to a new state, a new city, or even a new country, a new culture, your mind opens up to just new possibilities. Like, oh, okay, this is how people live. Like I live here in Kenya. So if you were to come to Kenya, or anyone was to come to Kenya, you'd be like, very interesting. You get some ideas and your brain starts to focus and make connections that were not obvious. And when you go home, you're like, maybe I should start doing this in my house, or maybe I should do this, or I should try this cuisine, or I should put this herb or this whatever fruit into my diet, because that brings bring nutrition. Because when you're looking at nutrition, we don't restrict and say you should only eat this because it's found in your country. No, we say that this is the best for your body, this is the best for your health, this is the best for your wellness, and it doesn't matter where it comes from on this planet. You go and take it, you absorb it, you utilize it. And that's what living abundantly on a personal level means, is being open to new experiences, being open to engaging the non-obvious aspects of life.
Yeah, I like that. And I think it means that we are open to new directions in terms of mindfulness, our physical health, our emotional and spiritual health, all those sorts of things. So we're all raised, within a certain context, and because of that, we have certain beliefs and values that are part of who we are. But as we get older and we get exposed to more diversity, and we see people from different cultures, different geopolitical, socioeconomic contexts, we see people from different spiritual or faith backgrounds or perspectives. We see people who look at dietary and physical health types of issues differently. And I think all of that then can push us to consider perhaps new creative ways to live our life in a more abundant way. I think the fundamental aspect of creativity is that we don't feel bound, we don't feel constrained, right? We don't feel bound by this preset type of circumstance that we find ourselves in. But if we have a creative mindset, that means we have an exploratory mindset. We recognize, that the world is infinitely diverse and abundant in itself, and that there's so much out there to explore and to learn. And so we're not going to restrict ourselves to perhaps the limitations of previous ways of understanding or knowing the world or interacting with the world around us. And that's not to say that we're not going to, we don't need to like get rid of all of our beliefs and values just because, we're exposed to new things. but it means that we can start to recognize the value that other backgrounds and perspectives have, and we can add them to our own. We can start to create our own unique value system based on both our upbringing, but also on what we experience in the world around us.
Absolutely. And a belief can only be strengthened when it's questioned. And not questioned in terms of whether it's right or wrong, but the relevance. What can I gain from this? Just like what you said, different environments, um, different geopolitical exposures, you start to question and you realize, all right, this is my position. Why is your position like this? And you have to question the way things are. And I did that a lot throughout my career. I used to always question, why do we do things the way we do it? Because I was just of the opinion that every organization really and truly wants to deliver on its vision and its mission. But I was very shocked when I entered the corporate world, where you just do a job. You have no idea how this relates to the bigger vision. You have no idea how you're contributing to the strategic direction of the organization, regardless of your level. And that used to just frustrate me, because like, what is my purpose? What am I doing here? How do I fit into the bigger picture? And when you question things, you realize, all right, I need to be able to help this organization, or help my relationship, or help my family members get to a different position. And when you live abundantly, you can't live creatively and abundantly without having emotional well-being. You have to be able to be more mindful, and be observant of the emotions, of your emotions and the emotions of others, and what triggers you and what you do that triggers someone else. And that's how the creative journey is. Neuroscientists also tell us that when we're in this constant flight or fight mode, we're full of stress, there's just so much cortisol running through our bodies. What happens in our brains is that the limbic system just takes over, and they say downshifting happens. We start to use the lower part of our brains, where the emotions are driving our thinking, our actions. And when you use the upper part of your brain, and when you downshift, you don't get the excitement of a new challenge. And so you fight and you fight for things to be exactly the way they are. And throughout this period post, or I don't know whether to say post, or where we are in this pandemic, but I pay very close attention to heads of states or press conferences, and a lot of people initially kept saying, I can't wait to go back to normal. I can't wait to go back to normal. And I've been trying to draw people's attentions that when we say that, we're pretty much not living in abundance, because we want to go back to the way things were, because we know how to operate there. So we don't have the excitement of a new norm. And I'm not saying we should be excited about loss of life, or anything like that, but we should not be too deterred when we face such levels of uncertainty. That's when we have to kick in the higher functioning parts of our brains and come up with solutions, come up with ideas. And I've been saying this for a while now, that the government is not going to bring us through this situation, right? Governments are good with executing, creating infrastructure, and giving us the machinery. This has to come from us as the citizens. We have to collaborate, we have to collate, we have to then hold governments accountable. The ideas are going to come from us, because we know where we're hurting. We know the pains that we have. We can't sit back and just expect that to happen. And that happens even in a corporate setting. So a lot of employees are disgruntled, and they sit back expecting that the senior leadership knows why they're disgruntled and they should fix it. But creativity means to question, to engage. It's not fearing to fail. It's not fearing to discover. It's not fearing to put yourself out there. It's not fearing to raise your hand and say, hey, I have an idea. It's not fearing to go to someone and say, I've observed this challenge. How can we work at it?
Yeah, that's excellent. Um, so I'm wondering, in terms of my personal life, I think a lot of what you shared, is really, great insights that I can try to apply to myself and even in my home. Um, but what about me as a leader? So I'm in an organization. I have a team of people. I want to live more abundantly. I want to work more abundantly. I want to be creative. I want to have more creativity. But how do I help to foster that kind of an environment in the workplace with my people, with my teams?
I mean, if you're a leader, the number one thing that your job is to provide the environment, the psychologically safe environment for your employees to bring out their creativity. That's number one priority. If someone doesn't feel safe, if someone doesn't feel like the environment is safe enough for them to fail, if they don't feel like they can trust you, then it doesn't matter the number of workshops that you put on, it doesn't matter what your intentions are, you will never go anywhere. So how do you develop this trust? How do you develop psychological safety? By being vulnerable, by trying something together and showing them by example, this may work, this may not work, and being very open when something has failed. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges leaders have in organizations is being able to be a bit vulnerable. And I'm not saying to show weakness. There's a very big difference. As a matter of fact, vulnerability is strength. By coming to my team and says, listen, guys, we had this direction, we had this objective, we didn't achieve it. Let's do a diagnosis of what happened. Let's work together to fix it. Employees will feel, all right, if you're willing to admit when something didn't work out right, then, I feel a little bit tad safer that, I can come to you and we can explore. But leadership requires you making the first step. Leadership requires allowing, giving people that level of trust, allowing people to knowing your people. The only how you can build trust with someone is by knowing them. In the corporate world, you have to be able to know, and I don't mean knowing every bio data, but it's understanding and knowing them. How does this person work? When do they prefer to work? How do they prefer to work? That's something that a leader needs to be able to understand. And even if an employee doesn't know that, is using your leadership skills to realize employee A seems to prefer working, in the mornings, right? And if I call afternoon meetings, I'm likely not to get, a lot of suggestions or a lot of productivity out of him, right? So it's knowing and understanding the dynamics. Yes, that's what I want to say, the dynamics of the team, and leveraging on that, allowing people to fail, allowing people to give ideas. I mean, the classic example that we always cite in our creativity world is example of 3M, where they allowed employees 15% of the time to work on passion projects, if you want to call it. And from that came the adhesive that eventually formed the Post-it notes, And when employees can see, look, even in failure, that there's progress, then this is great. Just learning the lessons, because failure has feedback. So I think the best way for you to do it as a leader is by allowing failure, but showing them that failure is feedback, it's not punitive.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. And it's all, like you said, it's all about creating the environment, creating the safe space, creating the context, providing the environment that people can engage in, that they can be creative in, that they can, fail in, fail forward, fail fast, learn from the failures, and reframe the failures. They're not actually failures at all. They're learnings, right? Their development and their successes in embryo. As we have something not work out the way we thought it should, that's the next thing that will propel us into our next great breakthrough.
Yeah, absolutely. Because and the last bonus tip I would say is that as a leader, if you really want to get your team more creative, is focus less on measuring the inputs and focus more on measuring the output. Allow people that flexibility to get it done in their unique way. 'Cause that's what creativity is about. And we've moved from the third industrial revolution, where we are focusing on productivity, where we can directly correlate someone's time and attendance to their output. Not in this fourth industrial revolution. As a matter of fact, if the longer I stay at work is the more productive I'm becoming, then that's an issue. That's an efficiency issue. I should be spending less and less time on a task, and getting more and more output, because I should be leveraging on technology. I should be leveraging on ideas. I should be becoming better at it. So a leader needs to allow people to find their way, set the benchmarks, set the output, and let them figure it out. Not like, hey, Darren, you have to be at your desk. You gotta be that. So, just trying to find what the outputs are and giving them more of the input that they need. Some people need a feedback loop. They need immediate feedback. Some people don't like immediate feedback. They want to work through the process. So it's just understanding that. So focus more on the outputs as opposed to focusing on the inputs.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Robert, it has been a real pleasure talking with you. We're about out of time, but this has been a super fun conversation, and I'm sad that it's coming to an end. So perhaps I can have you back on sometime so we can continue and explore other aspects of this. But before we close for today, I just want to give you a chance to get the last word and to share with listeners how they can get connected with you and find out more about what you're doing.
I can't imagine that we're finished with the interview. I certainly would love to come back. We were just getting warmed up in our conversation. So my last word definitely will be that creativity is the number one in-demand soft skill. And as an accountant, the reason why I continue to champion creativity, because when I started my practice in accountancy, I noticed that we did so many things manually. And I had no research to back my gut feeling, but I just had this intuition that there's going to come a time where all this manual work will be automated. And this was like in the late 90s, in the early 2000s, when computers were starting to come aboard. And that's been my mantra all through. If I'm doing anything that is manually intensive, then I'm wasting my time. And I want to challenge people that you have to learn how to break from this manual routine and take a step back and continuously disrupt yourself. That's what would be my last word. We need to find ways to continuously disrupt ourselves. And the only way you can do that is if you trust yourself. You have to be able to trust your ideas. In the corporate setting, you have to be able to trust your team. You have to be able to give them targets, give them assignments, and just let them figure it out. That's what will be my last word. And people can connect with me, one through my website, www.robertabell.com. Belle is Belle. You can find me on social media platforms. I'm on YouTube, Robert A. Bell. I am on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Robert A. Bell. A few variations. I think in Instagram, there's no space, so it's Robert_A_Bell. But you type Robert A. Bell, you'll find me there. Please feel free to reach out and let me know your thoughts on this podcast.
Excellent. Thank you, Robert. Again, it's been a real pleasure. I encourage listeners to reach out to Robert, get connected, find out ways that you might be able to collaborate with him, and work together to foster greater creativity and live more abundantly. As we close today, I just want to encourage everyone to continue to think about mindfulness practices, how to foster creativity and innovation to lead to greater productivity and stronger leadership within organizations. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that everyone can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope everyone has a great week. Thank you.